What is going on, everybody? I'm Retro Bliss, and this is Retro Bliss Rewind. We have a great podcast in store tonight. We're going to talk about the Atari 5200. So we have, let me just bring in who we have. Mike from Mike's Gaming Gala and Brian
Hello,
from BD
YouTube.
Retro Mods. We are expecting a fourth. Steve from Wired Up Retro is scheduled to be here. He was having some car issues, but I just got off a video call with him. He is getting things together, and I'm expecting him to come in. But that's okay because
we'll dock his pay.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay him the same thing I pay you guys. All right. So what we're gonna do, I want to talk about the 5200, but I want to start.
Oh, well, look at that.
Yeah, look who it is, Steve. What's going on, man? Can you hear us? Can you see us? And all that fun stuff.
Oh, he frozen.
Yeah, he might have hit a button or something. Well.
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear us now? Hello? Check one. All right. Brian's going to start talking about the 5200. So we're just going to talk, and if we have to take a quick pause just to make sure, because I don't think that Steve got a chance to check his equipment. So I want him to make sure that he has his mic or his volume up because he's using his phone.
Yep.
So he may not have his volume up on his phone. So let me text him and make sure. But go ahead and start.
I'm having trouble hearing you guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. We couldn't hear you before.
Wow.
We can hear you now, though.
It's like those old mobile phone commercials. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Whichever way works, man. As long as you can hear us and see us, and we can hear you and see you. So
yeah, I can't hear you guys. Oh man.
Oh dear.
Well, why don't you plug in those headphones? Oh.
Okay. Brian, why don't you give us the history of the Atari 5200?
Yeah, so the Atari 5200, which I'm sure everyone has seen one, but the thing is a beast. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest home video game consoles.
Do you have your controllers in the back there?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't have to show mine.
Yeah, but
yeah, and they're big controllers.
Yeah, part of the reason for this huge console was, again, because in the back they decided to have a tray to store the controllers, which is kind of good in theory, but yeah, makes it for an awkward sized console. But ultimately it was released in November of 1982, and it was heavily based off of their computer line. So at that point they had the Atari 400 and 800, and it was based off of that architecture. And it was released with a retail price of $270, which in today's standard is the equivalent of almost $900, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But it was obviously meant to be the successor to the 2600 and Atari's answer to try and compete with the Intellivision, because you got to remember during this time period they were getting concerned because now all of a sudden you started having multiple competition out there, and then with the rise of the microcomputer gaming, that concerned them as well, hence why this was built off of the computer architecture.
Yeah. Which was solid gaming architecture.
It was. It's just, as we'll learn in a bit, there's just a lot of bad things with some design choices. But so again, they were looking to compete with the Intellivision, but in essence, they didn't realize it at the time, but they would end up actually competing more with the ColecoVision, because it ended up the ColecoVision was released before the 5200 was able to come out. And with that, it was the first game console to also have 4 controller ports, because again, the original model, because there's a second version of it, but the original model did have 4 controller ports. Unfortunately, those really weren't utilized. There was only 2 commercial games that used it, which was Tennis and Super Breakout, which Super Breakout was actually the pack-in game for the Atari 5200 to begin with.
Now, you also had to make sure that you weren't driving an economy car when you wanted to bring it home, because
You're right.
this thing is huge.
It is. It's ridiculous.
It's no Coleco Atom, but it is huge.
Yes. But now I don't have one handy. I don't know if you have one, Mike, but then it used what they called an automatic TV switch box.
This war crime? Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah, that thing, I guess great in theory. In actual execution, it's bad. But ultimately, the idea behind it was it would automatically switch to the game system signal when the console was turned on. However, it was also running power through that, and it was known to have sparking issues. So when you would actually plug into your RF into that, it would spark a little bit, which, when you were probably putting that console on the carpet.
Just make sure you plug everything into the box before you plug it into the wall.
True, but how often do you think that happened? But
Jesse says here that some later made models came in a small box that was the same kind of the console. That is not a small box. It is a big console.
So it looks like Steve can hear us because he laughed at your joke there.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. This is
good.
good.
We can hear
awesome.
you too. Good, and we can see you. Great,
Good.
Awesome.
Excellent.
It's okay, man. Trust me. Didn't John Champeau of Champ Games was on our podcast one time, and I had talked with him earlier in the day, and he had given me a demo of Spider's Arcade, and while I was playing, kind of found a problem with the game. So he got to trying to fix debug the game, and he forgot to come on.
Oh,
Yeah, but Phil, you did that once too. You remembered that we were on because you got the notification that you were on.
Oh yeah. I was
From your
sitting at
Discord.
home. I was sitting at home watching NCIS or something, and I'm sitting with the wife, and I looked at my phone and it says Retro Bliss
Just went
Rewind
live.
our podcast is now live, and I'm like, what?
uh-oh.
So
All right, go ahead. What we're doing right now is Brian is talking about the specs, the history, a little bit of the details of the console itself. We do that to introduce the console to people who may not know what it is, and then we'll get to talking about other things. So as you were, Brian.
Yeah. So so like I said, we talked about that switch box and how it was all powered.
This thing that weighs a ton.
Yeah. But then let's talk about the controllers, because the controllers are what the 5200 are notorious for, and and with that, I mean they're somewhat similar, because again, all the second gen consoles were like afraid of computer gaming at that point with the microcomputers, so they felt like you had to have the keypad to it. It felt like you had to have all this extra stuff, which, as we've learned with this console and others, it's just, I don't think the consumer base was ready for this many buttons, and even with the utilization, didn't get fully utilized as it should. But
Can I add to that what the consumer base was really not ready for? Was this affront to humanity right here?
Oh.
Yeah.
It was
they were competing with television, so they saw that keypad and they were like, well,
it's a race to the bottom. With this, it's a race to the bottom. This was made for one game and one game only, and that is Missile Command. Missile Command is awesome with this. Everything else sucks. I don't care what you say. Everything else sucks.
Well, actually, I even think for Missile Command, it kind of sucks. So I think there's a better controller for that one. But with that, though, is that, again, as Mike was mentioning, this thing, these things break. Good luck finding a controller in working condition in this day and age. Even if it's brand new out of the box, it's probably going to break in no time.
Bought this. This was new old stock when I bought it.
Yeah.
And I asked him, does it work? He's like, well, if it doesn't work, it's not because of me.
Yeah. It's
And,
new old stock.
and it works, but this is still, it's funky. It's not perfectly working.
Yeah.
What do you
You know,
think
when-
about the controller, Steve?
When it first came out, this rubber boot would make it recenter, but after wear and tear takes its toll, it doesn't
Yeah.
want to recenter.
And you can
Like,
see this one being new. Mine does
yeah,
recenter. Like
and
the boot
that
is good
recentering
on
helps on
Yeah.
games like Pac-Man or Dig Dug.
Mhm.
So, I mean, when it was brand new, I think people kind of tolerated it. And, it's a very versatile controller because it allows you to position that cursor and missile command just perfectly. You can play games like Super Breakout, Kaboom. It's very accurate in placing your little paddle on the screen wherever you want it to be. So, I mean, it's more
Yeah.
than just missile command that it works well with. But
Maybe
it
the
is,
only one I particularly like
yeah,
is
but it's not
Command.
great. It's not great for Pac-Man,
Yeah.
and there's everybody knows that. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, pretty much what we've alluded to is this, ultimately this is an analog stick and it's a non-centering analog stick. And like Steve said, it's just after just a little bit of use, it just does not want to work right. Now again, which we'll talk about later, there are some things you can buy now, some modern replacement parts that kind of help restore your controller if you want it to, but no, this was literally the Achilles heel of the console at the end of the day.
Back in the 80s, you could buy a Wicco stick, which
Yeah.
has a keypad that's separate from the stick. And one nice thing about this is, it recenters. And it's also got some little levers on the underside. If you detach that, then this becomes not recentering. So it gives you the option. And that's a really nice thing about the Wicco controller from the 80s. So a lot of people back in the 90s, I know I was kind of new to the 5200. I ran out and grabbed one of these, and I really like the Wicco stick. It's pretty sweet.
So Jesse disagrees with you on the Wicco stick, but he actually likes the original.
What's wrong with the Wicco stick?
I'd like to have one just to have it.
I got and I can't find it for the life of me right now, but I got into the 5200 in the early 2000s, and I picked up from Atari Age. Somebody did a run of them, but they harvested a cartridge, and you could plug a DB9 controller into one side and then a 5200 controller for that's it right there. What's it called again? The protector? I had the brown one.
The Redemption 5200. So
Yes,
this one is for 7800 controllers with both buttons to work on your 5200. And you can plug a 5200 controller with its keypad into it, or this nice little Wicco keypad. You can plug it in. It works, and I like that. And then this is the Genesis or Atari 2600 version.
That's the one that I have.
That's the one everybody usually gets. So these were made recently. Actually, there's a fan of Atari making these, and I showed it on my Wired Up Retro channel, and they work very well. And it's nice that you can have keypad access and 2-button controllers. They work great on those 5200 games like Dreadnought Factor, where you need 2 buttons.
I actually saw when I first got my I just recently got a 5200. By the way, my friend Nick G is in the chat, and we're friends on another Facebook group, and we were talking about it, and I'm like, I'd love to get one, but I don't want to spend. The last one I saw on my Facebook Marketplace was around $400. And I think it had some games with it or whatever. But anyway, it was, and I'm like, but I can't do that. So he found me one. I got it with 2 controllers and 8 games with shipping from, I believe it was Florida, maybe, $150.
Wow.
And so
that's a deal.
But when I got the controllers, they didn't work. So one of the rebuild kits there that Mike showed, I did order. But in the interim, I watched a video that Steve had did on his channel where he actually used aluminum tape to put over the contacts to get it going. Now I was able to get it going, but for only a time, and then it kind of took a poop on me again. So that's why I decided, well, you know what, I'm just going to order a rebuild kit and try that and see how that goes. But in the meantime, I also ordered something else. We'll talk about that later.
I think Jesse has a thing for early '80s VCRs because
Well, you know,
best looking console of its era, really.
well, I will say that the black on it is slick and the silver on it. I mean, like that whole look, I think is slick. I don't think it needed the controller trays. I know what they were thinking, but if they would have not had controller trays on the back, that would have literally took a third off the console, like in the sense of space. And I think that would have been even a more slick looking console at that point if they would have took that off. So
it's a real behemoth. It really is.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a piece of furniture. We on the 5200 podcast, we talk about the piece of furniture that we added to our living room.
Yeah, it's like when you had the record player with the stereo that was really like your side table.
It is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's classic early 80s, no doubt. I also want to show you guys something interesting. You know, you said you spent $150 on your 5200. Well, this is this one's made by David Nelson, and it is a 5200 joystick with, you could choose to use the buttons on the left side to fire or the right side. It's ambidextrous, and it's got the keypad. The overlays actually slide into this. It's a top of the line 5200 controller.
Wow.
It's definitely expensive, but I really had to have it because I'm a 5200 fan, and this thing is awesome. It is a recentering stick. Let me show you that. It's recentering, but it's also fully analog. And I like, you know, it's definitely better than what the 5200 controller offers.
But if it were to
Dave
fail,
Nelson made a great controller.
if it were to fail, you wouldn't be able to rebuild it with one of the traditional kits. So I don't know what the electronics are inside.
It's like cars. If you buy a BMW, you accept the fact that you're going to take it to BMW for service.
20 years, it might fail and you'd be stuck. So
I mean, now it is using, again, with that, it's more of the standard potentiometer, like joysticks that you can get. And then I believe with that one, then what they've 3D printed, like they pulled out the potentiometers out of the stock joystick that you can buy of that, and then they've retrofitted with 3D printing the correct potentiometer, because it's just not a pull out put back in. So then I think with that, that's how they get the analog part of that working.
They call it the true analog joystick. In case you want to look it up, David Nelson makes it.
Okay, I've never seen that. That's really cool. And actually, considering exactly what it is, I don't think the $150 price point is that bad.
No,
especially if you play a lot of 5200.
Yeah.
If you're a 5200 gamer, you probably really need it.
Yeah. Well,
or you need something from BD Retro Mods.
Yeah,
I know
BD
some people
Retro
in the
Mods
chat
one
were
too. So
and that would I definitely am adding to my collection of controllers for the system. You know, one thing that's really cool about the 5200 is it's got so many different types of games. You know, you've got let's say trackball games. Missile Command would be an example of that. You've got spinner games. That would be Super Breakout or maybe Tempest, you know, the game that was put out in 2012. That's a really great game for a spinner. There's games that work great with digital controllers. There's games that work better with flight sticks. I can just think of so many different ways to play these games. And that's what makes the 5200 kind of special, because it has such versatility and control.
It does, but that's also part of why I think it got lost when it first came out. It was like, hey, we could do all these things, and at least with what we provide you, we don't really do any of them individually very well. Yeah,
it's supposed to be the jack of all trades, and it's kind of the master of none.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see my notes here, because we kind of sidetracked there a little bit.
Oh, and speaking
go ahead.
Speaking of that spinner option, I actually, in one of my episodes of Wired Up Retro, I created a spinner
I
from
remember
the
that. Yeah.
trackball, and this actually can be used on Tempest and some other games like Super Breakout.
That looked like a
And
WD-40 cap.
it is, yeah. Yeah. But
When I
it's got
saw
good
that.
grip, and it's not a, when you spin it, it's not like a flywheel, but it's kind of more of a rotary type controller. But
Okay.
I made it so that you can easily remove it and then drop the ball right back in and be back to playing your trackball games. So on my episode, I show how to make it, all the parts you need, and then you can, once you watch the video, you're like, oh yeah, that thing is easily removed. So it's very cool. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I
thought-
saw that too,
I
man.
do have a rollerball controller, and I do have the ability to do things electronically. So I'm going to be watching that video.
Yeah, it's all done with basically rubber bands, and I use some sticky, like wall tack to put some of the parts internally into it. But the wall tack doesn't actually attach to the console itself. But anyway, it's really a pretty simple thing to put together. It might take an afternoon of working at it, but once it's done, you've got a really nice controller.
Nice. I saw
With
that.
rubber
That was
bands,
really
and you
cool.
know what? That's right up my alley, man. I'm going to look at that.
Yeah, it's mechanical, not electronic.
Right.
But yeah, so ultimately, as going through those, just the Atari 5200 was not selling anywhere that Atari hoped it would. And again, there was a number of factors for that. Again, there was a lot of competition at that point. Controllers, people weren't fans of the controllers. And another issue that it honestly had at that time was almost all the games, not every single one, but almost all of them. I think there might be 4 or 5 that were ports of a 2600 game. So a lot of folks are like, why am I wanting to buy this new console to play an updated version of a game I already bought for the 2600? And
I'll have you know that Gremlins on the 5200 is completely different to Gremlins on the 2600.
And again, that's like one of the 4 or 5 games that are unique to the 5200. But so again, with that, they would revise the console to try to reduce costs. It would just go to 2 ports instead of 4. And then also for that particular console, they would also get rid of the switch box, go back to standard RF power supply. And then they would also have a 2600 adapter that would only work on the 2-port console.
Or you could send your 4-port in to be modified for it to work.
And I was going to say, you can modify stuff to make it work on a 4-port. You can YouTube that and see plenty of videos there. Or I'm sure talk to Ivory Tower. I'm sure he can do it too. But
who in their right mind would choose to play a 2600?
I don't know, but I mean, again, they were kind of desperate at that point because
it makes sense. It makes sense.
So, and then obviously at that point too, it was getting into the video game crash where consumer confidence was just at an all-time low, and on May 21st of 1984, Atari would officially discontinue the 5200. With the announcement of the Atari 7800, which did not come out in 1984, which, that's another topic for another time. So, but for the 18 months, because that's about all it lasted, that the 5200 was produced, it only sold around 1 million units. So again, it was, in the sense of commercial, success, it was a failure. And now again, as you go back to it, revisit it, play it, it's a very, very, very good console. It's just, at the time it was released, there was just a lot of bad things going for it off the cusp. And, but, as you try to go back and, revisit it today, it had a lot of good stuff. It just wasn't the right timing and stuff with it. So
yeah, I was reading before the stream that, there were 69 approximately games that were released during the life of the console.
Mm-hmm.
And, but they were either all video game ports, or they were games that were a success on the 2600, like Hero, not Beam Rider. Let's see, I don't remember what, but Beam Rider, Berserk. Of course, that was but they were the Mega Mania, games like that. There were some originals, but I don't think there were quite that many.
Yeah, I can think of, a handful of originals, like, for instance, well, let's see here. It was crossing my mind a moment ago. Oh, yeah, Countermeasure. Countermeasure's unique to the 5200. So is Space Dungeon. And at the time, Robotron 2084, yeah, that's a good game. Robotron 2084, I think the only version you could play during the whole of, all the mid 80s was on the 5200. And it's a fantastic game. Also,
I call this the Caleb Garner Eat Your Heart Out, because it comes with a coupler.
Yes, two joysticks connected.
So you need 2 working 5200 controllers in order to play this.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And
it is awesome when it works.
There's a little converter that allows you to use your PlayStation controller on your 5200, and this allows both thumbsticks on your PlayStation controller to be used on Space Dungeon and Robotron 2084. A friend of mine put this together, Tony Stout, and he worked hard, and it's really a nice adapter.
Wow.
But again, this will set you back some big bucks if you have someone commissioned to make it for you. It's publicly available as far as the circuit board and all that. That's already been mapped out.
If you can do it
gotta
yourself.
Find somebody to make one for you.
Yeah.
Yep, and the parts are probably
Also, you could get a Maker
now.
Matrix. This is a 5200 gamepad with a thumbstick and the keypad, which is cool. So
I like that too.
I reviewed this on my channel
Yep.
a while back. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's pretty nice.
Yep. Didn't you have that at one of your shows too?
Yeah, I did.
I think
brought
I
it.
saw that when I saw you last time.
It's really flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It
feels
almost-
perfect. Yeah.
It almost reminds me of an Ouya controller. It has that same kind of look to it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Ouya controller, and there's also a NES controller that's got little hand.
The
yeah,
NES
it kind
Max.
of reminds
I
me
think
of that
it's
too.
called.
Yeah,
Yeah.
flat. Hmm.
So my limited experience, I've actually done more emulation for 5200 games than I've actually played on a 5200 since I've just recently gotten mine. But the games, I mean,
They're great.
if I were a kid and I got my 2600 and then someone said, "Hey, listen, you could either keep your 2600 or you could take this 5200 that's got these games," and I would have played those games. I would have definitely kept the 5200 because the
Yeah.
games are just so much better and nearly arcade perfect in some instances. The games are really good. Guess who's in the chat? John Champeau.
He is.
Yeah. What's going on, John?
And
We
he
were talking
thinks
about
the
you earlier.
5200 is the coolest retro console ever, and he loves the controllers, which just shows that nobody's perfect.
Well, I think
And,
John's got it going on.
And Cyrus thinks I have a deep-rooted disappointment in the 5200 controller, and I just might.
Many people do.
I really like the 5200. It's got, let's be fair to it. For when it came out, fantastic graphics, great ports of some great games, a few great original games, not tons, but a few. If I just had it back in the day, then I might feel very different about it, but I didn't come to it until the early 2000s when I was already in my 20s. So
I don't want to. Are we getting a preview here from John Champeau?
What's going on, John?
He said
Oh.
He says Space Dungeon is one of my faves. Wonder how a 2600 version would be? Wink, wink.
I think we know.
See, it pays to watch Retro Bliss Gaming and Retro Bliss Rewind, right? So, yeah, man, that's awesome. That's really cool. Anyway, I had to jump. I had to say that. I couldn't let that go. Keep it to myself. He says, keep it to yourself. Oh, that's like unringing a bell at this point.
Yeah, that's it. Don't worry, John. It's just between us.
Yeah. We promise we won't tell anybody directly. So,
yeah, like I said, the controller itself is a love hate. I mean, again, it's. I think where my frustration, again, I wouldn't, because I never had a 5200 growing up. I never played it like Mike. I did not play it until much later on. But I see why people would have been upset with it. I mean, you go from a console that was a straight digital joystick and one button to all of a sudden you have, something that looks like it came out of NASA, where you got like all the keypad and then the two little tiny buttons on the side, which, were replicated.
Let's be honest. When you saw this in pictures, though, you wanted to play it. It looked cool.
Right.
And it's got a pause button on it right there.
And I think the crazy part is just, like we mentioned, it was based off of the Atari 400 and 800, where the exact same games were available and they used a 2600 controller just fine, so that's just where, again, they were so afraid of micro computers at that point. They felt they had to go this route. And I think if they would have just gave us just a more basic controller with two buttons, I think people would have gravitated it to a lot more. But then the other side of it is they needed more original games. I mean, because stuff was not cheap back then, as we talked about, like what the equivalent is today. I mean, we get upset about the cost of games, but cost of games were a lot more expensive back then. And if I already paid for Space Invaders on the 2600, why do I want to pay for Space Invaders again on the 5200? Or if I already have Dig Dug on the 2600, why do I want to pay for Dig Dug on the 5200? And then it got time to a point, well, if I already own a 2600 and it's cheaper to buy it on the 2600, I should just get it on the 2600, and that's just, I don't know that the climate of video gaming wasn't, I think, at a point where, people were in this buy-in of let's rebuy the same game for how many times, because we're all guilty of that nowadays. Every time, anytime Mario gets re-released for the 50th time, we got to go buy it. So
we hadn't yet been trained that it's like, okay, every few years you have to replace your video game system with a new one.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the Switch 2, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm avoiding.
We talked about that last week, much to Jeremiah Thomas's chagrin.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of the original CX40 either, and it's just because I don't like playing my right-handed with joystick, and the way it's designed, obviously, it's designed to use it right-handed. So, and I agree, it definitely doesn't hold up to today's standards at all. But I mean, back then, when that's all you were accustomed to, I mean, it was a much different outlook.
Well, that was another thing, with these coffin-shaped controllers, whether they be Intellivision or ColecoVision or 5200. They kind of marketed it as, hey, if you're a lefty or a righty, it's going to work. You can change off your hand, which the same exists with some of the other controllers, but. Yeah, I got used to my 2600 controller so much that, I had calluses on my hand in a certain spot where it sat.
Yeah.
And to this day, I still play those games like crazy with that controller because I got so used to it.
Now, again, if I'm using a commercial
in
controller...
comparison, and in comparison, they were tanks.
Yeah.
Like how many controllers have you found? Actually, like this is one of those flashback ones, but how many original controllers have you found where the rubber is like completely torn off, but it still works just fine?
Yeah, it happens. Not the 5200 controllers.
No.
26.
Yeah. No, when it comes to the commercial release 2600 controllers, my favorite's Attack 2. And again, just because it had both buttons. and it feels great. But
the flick stick is good too. I like that.
yeah, oh yeah. But for another controller, and again, you kind of showed the one you modified, but like how I said about Missile Command, because how you said how great this controller was for Missile Command.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they did have an official trackball controller.
You still have the film on that.
I
metal.
do, because
that is a nice one.
This was new old stock, so I have a hard time. Yeah, I have a hard time peeling this off because of that. So,
I always wait till the last minute, man.
But no, I mean, this was it still is. It's a very good controller. And to me, this is how you play Missile Command and Centipede.
True. I was just saying that this is very good for Missile Command.
Yeah.
Now I hope at some point, because again, these keep seeming to get more and more expensive. If I can find one that's not in such pristine condition, I know I want to kind of modify, changing out the buttons with more arcade buttons, things like that. But
I'll trade you mine because mine doesn't still have the film on.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I mean, as much as I like drilling holes and stuff, I'm not drilling holes in this one. So,
well, if you trade it to me, I'm certainly not going to.
I also want to show you guys another really interesting controller. This was actually sent to me by a viewer recently, and this is made by.
That's really dark. Let me make you big.
Yeah, Retro Game Boys makes this one. And one thing I found out about it, it's definitely meant for a right-handed person, okay? But it's also got the potentiometer adjusters that are actually kind of big. And I think he purposely made these a little big so that you could play games like Super Breakout and Kaboom. I was playing it the other day with these, and you could play the game very well with this.
I believe, Brian, yours is the exact same. It's just the potentiometers are on the back, right?
Yeah.
Yep. They sometimes will put them on the back. I've seen yours. Yeah.
Yep.
This was I was just like blown away that one of my viewers decided to send this my way. Thanks, Jason. But this thing is really sweet.
We all need viewers like Jason.
Yep.
That's right. We do.
Yeah.
Especially since
friends
I don't
like
get
Brian
paid for my channel. So every once in a while I get a little perk.
Yeah. And I will say, my opinion is, again, with the aftermarkets, and again, everyone's their own personal preference there. I personally like the digital joystick when it comes to 5200. Will it work on everything? No, it doesn't. There's like 4 or 5 games that you'll have issues with when you don't have an analog controller. But again, so many of these games were just ports of a 2600 or ports from the Atari 400, 800 that were designed to be played digitally. So when you have that digital joystick, it just makes for a much better experience, in my opinion, when playing those type of games. Now, again, if you want to play Missile Command, that digital controller is not going to be for you. If
even
you
baseball, baseball is not good with it.
Right. I mean, Star Wars Arcade does not work with it.
I think of the 69 released 80s games, about 62 are pretty good with pretty good or fantastic with digital controllers, and about 7 or 8 are kind of like no, don't do it.
Right. And that's kind of why I've stuck with the digital for mine, because
can we see yours, Brian? I want to see it.
Yeah,
you have it with you.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Well, what I have on hand, because I've not made an updated one for myself, this is just one of my very originals that I did.
Oh yeah. That's
nice. But again, I do have it different. It's a different enclosure that's a little bigger now, a little more room with it. But the concept's all the same, where again, you got the number pad, the A, B, and C is your, start, pause, reset. Then you got the buttons, and then on the back is where I have the potentiometers to adjust it, because obviously, since it wasn't designed for digital controls, and every Atari 5200 can be a little different, that you use those to kind of get your center when you and the best game to do that with is Missile Command. You just put that in, get it centered, and then after that you don't have to mess with it anymore. But you could technically use those also to act as paddles if you wanted to, for like Kaboom or Super Breakout. that was one other controller that I was kind of working on, was to make a more of a paddle type controller, similar like the arcade style I did for the 2600. Just, unfortunately with tariffs right now, I'm not sure that I'll release that yet. Because again, I didn't buy a bunch of stock prior to the tariffs. And, but again, I just, again, if you want every game to work, obviously you want an analog controller, and Steve showed a couple options there. But the challenge with an analog controller, there you go. That's the more modern.
This
look
is the
of it.
updated.
So yeah, the updated style there and then again in the back, or actually on the sides, is where the potentiometers are. But so the analog one, the issue that aftermarket folks have struggled with is the fact that the potentiometers in a 5200 controller use 500K pots, which that is not a standard. The standard analog stuff you have today is usually 10K pots. So like even in the Vectrex, it used a 10K pot. So it's very easy to do analog controls on an aftermarket Vectrex if you want to. It gets a little harder with the 5200. Nice. Because ultimately, like,
hi, John.
yeah. So, you ultimately, like the one that Steve held up that looked like the Ouya controller. I mean, in that you got to have, stuff to like emulate a 500K pot. So, you got different chips in there to do that, to try to emulate that 10K signal to a 500K. That other one he showed, because I was looking at doing that possibly myself, was you modify that 10K joystick, analog joystick that you can buy, which you can easily get from a number of sites. But again, there's just a lot of, that goes into that. And again, you got to, those 500K pots don't fit in those analog joysticks. You got to modify it with like a 3D print to do that. And, and again, it all comes down to what you want to use there. And to me, I think it's great that there's options out there, because like with a lot of this stuff, the more people that are doing it, I guess, more innovation that happens, and that's not a bad thing. So
I think there's a company called Atladdon, and they're supposedly going to make a 5200 controller that's got even a paddle on board, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be interesting.
And then speaking about controllers, so obviously with keypad, you had overlays, but there was actually, like, most games did not come with overlays. 5200, I think, compared to ColecoVision and especially Intellivision, almost everything came with overlays. But it really did not make common use of the keypad, despite the fact it being there.
Although there's a spot on the back of each cartridge.
There is,
where you can store overlays should you have them.
Atari cartridges, cool. Anyway. Yeah. I don't think
Atari cartridges. Yeah, like the third parties. No.
But yeah, so on the Atari cartridges, you could, put them right on the back, so you hopefully wouldn't lose them. So
hopefully, yes.
And the keypad's okay. It's kind of like a shrunken down Star Raiders controller.
Yeah, they're kind of rubbery.
Yep.
And you're not. You can't tell just by feel whether or not it's engaged or not either. So, if it's working perfectly, it would be. But if you're having problems with it, and let's say the number one is sticking or something, there's no way to really tell. So,
really, almost all Atari games had overlays? No.
I'd say
I don't know the answer to that, because most of mine
might be more than 90%. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it could have been. It's just most of mine were bought loose, so they just never had them.
Activision made it. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, okay.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeremiah. Yeah.
Because I was looking at a list, and like, does Gremlins have overlays?
I can't remember. My Gremlins is new in the box. I got it from Venezuela about 7 or 8 years ago when they were blowing them out at really cheap prices, and I
Yeah,
never opened
mine-
the box. Mine's
Mine,
sealed.
mine is a
Yeah,
closed
mine's
box.
sealed as well, so I cannot verify that.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
I can open it.
Did Pango have overlays?
I think so.
I
think-
usually use my Atari Max flash cartridge. I was under the impression that most games did not make use of the overlays, but I could be wrong.
There's a
So
remake for Intellidisc or for Tron Deadly Disc for the Intellivision called Intellidiscs, and this is the overlay for that game right here. So yeah,
oh,
Okay.
that's a neat little game. I
Uh,
put that on my YouTube channel and reviewed it, and it has some interesting capabilities with dual controllers. You can use that that coupler and use
Pango
two
does not
to
have an
control.
overlay.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Pango does not.
so we haven't talked too much about the games. We started to about the overlay part, but as far as the
Yeah.
games are concerned, we just
So-
kind of
so
brushed
real-
on the
so,
fact that
yeah.
a lot of them were ports or.
Well, yeah, before we start on games, just real quick, because I know there's been a couple questions that come through that want to answer.
Yeah, let me.
Like going way back.
Okay.
And again, I forget the couple that because someone asked like, where can I get the parts for like Atari?
Oh, there was a
5200
lot
controller?
of back and forth in the
Yeah.
chat about that. I didn't bring them up.
Okay, I mean, where I and again, there's a couple places, but I guess where I recommend because I feel it's the fairest price for the parts is AtariRepairParts.com because I've
Yeah,
ordered
they're
some
good.
stuff.
They
I've
don't,
ordered some-
but yeah, the back and forth was that they don't have everything, and like Console 5 has some
Right.
stuff, but like for instance, this Atari 5200 repair kit,
yeah,
it's like all the buttons, right?
Right.
It says $20. I bought this at Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and they had a show special for $15. Right? Like
Mhm.
if you see them at a show, they're always a little cheaper too.
Well, but that price is still really, even at $20, is really good compared to some of the other ones out there. But
That is cheap. Yeah.
yeah, but I found, like I said, I like using Atari repair parts for it. But again, Console 5 is my second go-to if there's something that Atari repair parts doesn't have. So
Okay, we need to see an official list because this is what I was under the impression. There's only a little over 20 games on the 5200 with overlays.
Well, I guess I was wrong, wasn't I?
That's what Jesse says. He could be wrong too. There's a lot of smart people in the chat.
All right. Well, I thought most of them had it, but wow. Okay.
I was under the impression they don't. But in fairness, I play most of my 5200 on one of these. So I don't even open my boxes and see if there's an overlay.
Which can I mention something about that?
Sure.
Now they're taking pre-orders for new ones. I guess they've kind of upgraded the model a little bit. I don't know how much they've upgraded. I don't think it's probably been that much, but they're not cheap. They're like $129. But
I've had mine for ages. This is probably an old version of it.
I asked Brian about. I knew he had one for the ColecoVision, I believe it was, and so I asked him how the compatibility was and if he liked it, and he loves it. So I went ahead. I've got one on order. Of course, the pre-orders are open until the end of the month. That's it. So after that, will they sell them? I know they're selling the ColecoVisions on the website without pre-order. So the 5200, the new 5200 model may be available at that time once it's completed.
I have Atari Max for both ColecoVision and Atari 5200, and
Okay.
I like both of them a lot. So
yeah.
But then Super Mega Graphics asked just real quick about how I thought about doing a 5200 controller with an analog stick. I have, like I said, I was pretty close in the design process. That's why, again, I know how that's been configured. It's just it's one of those. I just, again, with most of the games, I preferring to play digital. I kind of struggled. Like I wasn't happy with it. It doesn't mean I won't go back to it and try it again. But the quote unquote easiest solution to get the correct pots is again to get that standard 10K analog joystick, pull those pots out, make some type of retrofitting to then put a 500K pot in those spots where the 10K pots were, and then go with that. I mean, that's kind of your quote unquote easiest way to do it. Again, just within my own testing and just trying, I just was never happy with my final product with it. But that doesn't mean I won't go back and revisit it at some point. I mean, especially if it's something people really, really want.
I was going to say it's probably a matter of supply and demand as well.
Right. So.
And parts availability.
Yes, that's a big part of it. But so if we're talking about games, obviously a lot of the publishers that published on the 2600 also made versions of their games for the 5200, at least at the start when it came out. So you had Sega making their stuff, you had CBS bringing some of their games over. Lucasfilm, now obviously this is not something that was on the 2600, but Lucasfilm obviously made games for the 5200, and I had to bring this one for Poe because Parker Brothers also brought some of its favorites over. And this is a quite good version of Popeye, to be honest. There were a couple more. Activision obviously did. I don't have any boxed Activision games. Who else? Who else published for the 5200?
I think you covered them all. Sega, Activision, CBS,
and Parker Brothers. Yeah,
Parker Brothers, right?
And Lucasfilm.
And Lucasfilm, right? Yeah.
I think that was. Who did Miner 2049?
Oh, that's Big Five.
Big Five. So that would have been another one because
you're right. Yeah. And they made
I have that one.
Bounty Bob Strikes Back, which is the rarest thing. It's worth maybe $800, $900 now.
Is it that much now?
Oh yeah,
it's up there. Yeah, that's the one game I don't have in my collection. I've got all the other 68. 69 is missing.
And for good reason.
For good reason. Well, someday I'll find it somehow.
Well, 68 is a speed limit because at 69 you got to turn around. Sorry, Phil.
We're getting into some thin ice. We're getting on thin ice here, guys. So okay.
Well, I mean, do we want to kind of just talk about maybe some, like a few of our favorites, or how do we want to do this?
Well, I do also just want to briefly mention, because there is a decent amount of stuff available homebrew wise for the 5200. This one I got from Atari Age, but I have this stack, and I didn't buy it from like a friend of mine. Actually, I got these off of Michael Thomason. Why we think? But Video 61 makes a lot of 5200 homebrews. They're not high end by any stretch, but they're 5200 games, and they're new games, and or they're ports of other games. Like this is Animal Keeper, right? This is Zookeeper.
Oh,
are those still available at Good Deal Games, or?
I don't know if they're available at Good Deal Games. I do know that Video 61 is still around, and they're still making games and selling games. This is their high-end packaging. It's a label stuck on a white box. It fits a cartridge and a little folded up piece of paper for the instructions.
Collector's dream.
It does the trick, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if Atari Age will start to produce games again for the 5200.
Yeah, because like I picked this one up, I think in the last chance sale was Kid.
Yeah,
so
I picked up Xevious and that remade version of Zaxxon that kind of has some extra features in it. That was a nice pickup.
Yeah.
I also recently got Crystal Castles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brian, you were talking about favorites.
Yeah, I just again, it's kind of hard because again, a lot of the games are very, again, just ports from the 2600. But I will say though, every version, I believe, I mean, there could be a couple outliers, but the 5200 versions of the games that they re-released from the 2600 were all very good. I mean, when you looked at Missile Command, when you looked at Centipede, even when you looked at, Galaxian, all these games were so good. It's just, again, it was just poor rollout on Atari's part. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
I mean, there was obviously, when you go back and play it, like, is it worth getting a 5200 today? I think it is if you can find it for a reasonable price. Now,
Especially if you've got a flash cart.
Yeah, you get a flash cart with a 5200. It's a very fun experience. And but I know Steve mentioned it, but like one of the original games, well, at least that was not on the 2600 that I really like for the 5200 is the Dreadnought Factor. I mean, I don't have the physical cart. One of these days I will, because I like it so much, but really good game. I enjoy
it shows
that
up
one
a lot on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That and Defender gets a lot of play time, and I play a little Gyrus too. Gyrus is
addicting on
Gyrus on that is very, very good, and and really fun to play with a digital controller. But because I tried playing it with the original, and it didn't work out for me as well. But I really like Pitfall 2 on 5200 was really good.
Yeah, it's got a hidden world in it, which is amazing.
Yeah. Probably my most favorite game for the 5200. And again, it didn't really get a true commercial release until like they found it in warehouses, was just Gremlins, which it came out after the fact. I think it came out like a year after the 5200 was discontinued because they just found it in a warehouse, and they decided to put it out there and sell it. But again, just like yours, mine's new in box. And
you're gonna crack that open live?
I am not gonna crack it open because I can just play it on my Atari Max.
That's why mine is sealed.
But I mean, this was such a good game on that console. I mean, and especially when, not that the 2600 one was horrible, but this one made
it was
a lot
pretty
more
basic.
sense. Yeah, this one made a lot more sense than the premise of the 2600 version, with what you had to do and everything. So, but it's a really fun one. I'd say that's some of my favorites.
Open it.
Yeah.
Because people are chanting opening it, I'm not showing mine again.
Yeah.
If I was to pick a couple of my favorites, Countermeasure is definitely one of them. I like Countermeasure a lot. Space Dungeon, like if you've got two working controllers, I love Space Dungeon. I do like Gremlins. I think there's a Pango. It's a great version of Pango.
Yeah.
And obviously I think it is the best console release of Missile Command. I love Missile Command on the 5200.
Absolutely. Even Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, and with the right controller,
they're good versions.
They really are awesome versions.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Jeremiah. Because it literally got missed by like a day or something, and it was already in production, but they didn't want to put it on the shelves because they were ending the console. So that's why it was just like later on that was just found in warehouses, and at that point, okay, sure, sell them. So.
Yeah.
So I'm actually fairly new, obviously, to the 5200, but I emulate. I do like to emulate. I feel like I'm halfway decent at emulation, and so the emulator that I use for 5200 games is called Altera. Okay, and I'm not going to go into all that. We're not talking about emulators. We're talking about the console. But we are talking about the games right now. Now. I've ordered one of these multi-carts. When it comes in, I plan on putting games on it, but you can put homebrews on it too. And there are links in the description of our videos, Mike and I's, where you can download a ton of them. Now, I'm just going to go down the list like just real quick. Our buddy Daryl Ginther, he has done some hacks. And I believe he hacked Popeye there's a version of Popeye for the 5200, but he hacked a version so that the sprites would actually look better than they do on the original. and there are some other games
Isn't
that
there a
he's done.
scramble? Isn't there a scramble game version that's kind of even upgraded beyond other consoles?
Yes,
Mm.
there's I believe that link is also in the description of the
Yeah.
video. So so you'll want to check that out, especially if you guys are either emulating or you have multi-carts where you can play them on your 5200. Check them out. There are quite a number of them, and including our buddy James O'Brien has links to homebrews. I have them from 2025 all the way down to 2019. Some are not so good, some are good. Check them out. You can, it can't hurt to go on there. You can download them for free if you have the hard drive space. It doesn't cost you anything but your time. So
I've got an emulator box called the Atari Game Station Pro, and I put a lot of my 5200 ROMs on that.
yeah.
And I've shown a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about using your old school controllers like 2600 trackballs on the Atari Game Station Pro with adapters, and it's actually not that difficult to do. So those are Blissbox products called Gamer Pro and Gamer Pro Advanced. So you guys might want to check my videos on the Atari Game Station Pro. I've done I think 3 so far. And
I
I've got one
highly
of the-
suggest not just those, but he has done more than 3 on the 5200 in general. There are quite a
And
few.
the Atari 400 Mini also plays 5200 ROMs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It does.
Yeah.
And I don't have that yet. I'm looking forward to getting that.
Yeah, and there's a menu there. You can pick the game, and then you have to pick on what console that it plays on, either whether it's a Atari 8-bit computer or you can actually pick the 5200 itself.
That's neat.
So, but you only
Yeah.
have it only comes with the CX40 style joystick with one
Right.
button.
Yeah,
Well,
action.
we did just
Yeah.
responding to this comment. We did miss a few publishers for the 5200, and Sunrise was one of them. Go ahead.
Okay.
And Electric Concepts for Meteorites.
Yep.
And
All right.
I had to go back and search that one. Yeah, it looks like it was what game? Quest for
Quintana Roo.
Yeah, Quintana Roo. Yep.
I like the 400 mini. You guys were talking about that. That's a nice little option. It is. You can load. Just get you a.
It's not perfect with its 5200 stuff, but
No.
it's an option
No.
if you've got one. Yep.
It's a matter of your controllers. Why? It can emulate it fine. It just can't. You can't play it because you don't have the right
Yeah.
controller. on the
Does it
machine.
have a
Electric
keypad?
Concepts was one as well.
Does it have keypad access on the game?
Yeah, what you can do is you can hook up a keyboard and use a
okay.
keyboard and a controller at the same
nice.
time. Yes.
Yeah.
They also
Yeah.
have,
And I
like,
think you can map buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's like a button you can hit to do like an overlay that then you can move your cursor over and like click the buttons that way for the
that's cool.
keypad.
Yeah.
So
Well, guys, I think this has been a very fun episode.
Oh, absolutely.
We usually go for about an hour, and we've been an hour. So I think, unless you guys have something else you'd like to add.
I would like to just say officially that I don't hate this as much as maybe I portrayed. I don't like this, but I don't hate it that much. Like, it does the job. When they work, they're all right.
All right, we're gonna find out once I do. Yeah,
I got to get one of those Wico sticks.
Yeah, that sounds. I'm gonna have to look into that. So, anyway.
those Wico sticks are very, very expensive now.
All right,
for the
well, then,
5200.
Mike, I just bought some controllers from Brian, and Mike says, how's your wife liking you back on the couch? And I said, she told me that I have to stay with Brian now.
and my reply was that's great. He'll save so much in postage.
Yeah, but poor Brian's his food bill's gonna go way up.
Somebody just
All right.
mentioned in the comments below that there's a Competition Pro digital
Yeah.
stick from the 80s. We missed it. So yeah, you got to give a little props to the Competition Pro. It's a nice one for playing Pac-Man, Dig Dug, etc. Thumb up.
Thanks for mentioning that, Jeremiah. We appreciate it. And thank you, Steve, for being on the show. If you guys don't know or haven't heard of Wired Up Retro, there's a link in the description where you can subscribe to his channel. Go over there, check out his channel, especially if you like the 5200. You don't want to pass up watching his videos. And so, and he's a great guy to boot. So, and just
you're a great guy too.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys. I'll pay you after the show.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Anyway, since you came in late, I forgot to tell you, there's an outro video. Do not leave.
Okay.
Don't leave.
Okay.
The screen's going to go blank for a while, but don't leave. We'll be right back. All right. So anyway, let me get set here because I was getting ready for the chat here. Thanks, guys, for watching. You guys are awesome. I had a fun time. Next week, what are we going to talk about, Mike?
We're going to be talking about the Atari Age Intellivision Homebrew Awards. If you guys missed it, Papa Pete, just before this podcast, had a video with all the nominations. The actual voting should be live now. If it isn't, it will be soon. And next week, we're going to be talking about all the categories, all the games. And prior to that, I will do my voting. So I will have a live stream voting probably on Sunday night. But then we'll talk about everything to do with the awards on Tuesday.
Sounds great. I think it's going to be a good show. It was a good suggestion. So, all right, guys, we'll see you next time. Hopefully you guys will be here next week. And thank you again, Steve. We appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah,
and with that, we're gonna sign out. See you later. Bye.